DeShaun Tate back with you guys for the night. This is the final buzzer. Welcome into it. Unless you haven't really heard exactly what this is, the final buzzer being a little promotional piece for Tate's Take, the podcast, where you can find anywhere you find your favorite podcast, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, even Stitcher and Red Circle. Also can find us streaming this live on Facebook, streaming live on YouTube as well. And be sure to follow along on social media at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Now, the whole point of this platform is basically every night, Monday through Friday of the NBA playoffs, concluding the last game tonight, obviously being the Portland Trail Blazers and the Los Angeles Lakers on Mamba night. Try and stick to, see if I can do a little bit better this time around, to probably about 10, 15 good minutes of some good content, which I like to call the best basketball content, most entertaining basketball content, most intriguing, most educational, most informational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. So every night, Monday through Friday, after the playoff games for the NBA is where you can chime in as well. You can see it there scrolling at the bottom on the ticker to where you can also be a part of the show. So I want to recap, obviously, the first game of tonight. Let's go into that one where you have the Milwaukee Bucks take down the Orlando Magic 121-106 in game 4. Now Milwaukee takes a 3-1 lead. So let's jump into that one because this is one that most people will probably agree should have been wrapped up. And I kind of figured, I thought that, Orlando would probably win it a game, if not nothing else, have that opportunity. And they did in the very first game. And that's one of the games that's still highlighted to me. And I get it, they haven't done very much since against Milwaukee, and you really can't blame them. But that was one that highlighted to me and stuck out to me a little bit because since then we haven't seen very good performances by certain players. Chris Middleton being one of them, who had a big fourth quarter for the team tonight after pouring in 21 points and 10 rebounds. But Pat Connaughton coming off the bench. Dante DiVincenzo coming off the bench haven't necessarily been, not saying they haven't been productive or contributors, but they haven't been consistent. And I think that's something that can be scary for another team that will be waiting for them up next. So we'll kind of get into that here in a second to see how that matchup goes, because some people believe that this particular team can be one that can take down the Milwaukee Bucks. Another thing that they have to really kind of stay away from as a team, 66% shooting from the free throw line is just not going to cut it for this team, who everybody pretty much think was or is a shoe-in for the Eastern Conference Finals and to make it to the NBA Finals, if I'm being quite honest. And I was even asked the question, if you have Milwaukee coming out the East, or would you take the field, which way would you go? And I think it's kind of showing different reasons as to why I would take the field, because while Milwaukee does look impressive after game one still lingers. That still is in my brain. That still sticks out like a sore thumb. And I think that some of those miscues are there, if not in any other place, then certainly at the charity stripe. Giannis Antetokounmpo doing Giannis Antetokounmpo things. I was asked a question if I could spell his last name, and I'm going to try and do it with my eyes closed here. Antetkounmpo. I think I have to kind of do a spell check on that one. Much easier to read off the list of his statistics than it is to spell his name. 31 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists, and 1 block. 66% shooting from the field tonight. But again, much like it was with last year, and I know not everybody has quite that. I know the Orlando Magic doesn't have them. I know that their opponent that's waiting on them up next doesn't have them either. But I think that was pretty much, they've been shown the blueprint. The blueprint has been shown, rather, of how you beat this Milwaukee team. And that's to sit back and let Giannis Antetokounmpo shoot from outside. 1 for 5 from 3 for him on tonight. Nikolai Vucevic, who's been the bright spot amongst any, not only for this particular series and for this particular team in the Orlando Magic, in this bubble. I mean, we weren't really talking about it very much, but he has definitely been a bright spot for the NBA. If I'm just being honest, showing some of his consistency, his dominance, and exactly knowing what you'll get out of him in a player. He tallies 31 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and goes 6 for 10 from three. So not only did he shoot 60% from three, but he hit six three-pointers in that particular game. And I think that that's something that you kind of have to tip your cap to an extent when you start talking about that. Markelle Fultz, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, put together a pretty good night for himself. And while I always am one to call DJ Augustine the best or one of the best, certainly in the conversation for best backup point guards in the league, he didn't do very well tonight. Terrence Ross, 19 points, 8 rebounds. From that standpoint, he did good, but 1 for 8 from three didn't cut it. And they're pretty much seeing themselves outside of the playoffs the way that I see it by the time Wednesday rolls around. As for the next game, the Oklahoma City Thunder defeat the Houston Rockets. I don't know how much of a shocker that was, but after the Rockets go up 2-0, OKC goes up to the series at 2-0. I'm sorry, that's at 2-2. 17-14 tonight in game 4. The series is tied now. And for all the people who said that home court advantage doesn't make much of a difference, well, there are some of those people that kind of beg to differ in regards to one of to that being said. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, if you want to be technical about it, they are the lower seed in this particular series, and these past 2 games have technically been home games for them, so they might actually feel like it's giving them a little bit of a benefit. Still kind of uncertain as to what the status will be for Russell Westbrook. I really was under the impression of believing that they weren't going to try to rush him back because they probably felt like they could necessarily easily get past the Thunder, but relatively easily to an extent to where there wasn't very much urgency to bring him in. That's probably not the case now. Do you start putting a little bit more pressure on Westbrook? Seems like he's certainly needed. And Billy Donovan doing a great job, obviously showing why he was in that Coach of the Year conversation. I know that he didn't win it, and we'll get to some coaches a little bit later because there's one organization that doesn't have a coach anymore, but Billy Donovan certainly doing a really good job with this Houston team that I think have been as dangerous as anybody, even without a center, because they shoot so many threes, high volume shooting team. And while the percentages aren't always great, as long as they have the ball in their hands at the last possession at the end of the game, then they're just fine with living that kind of life. And so from that standpoint, Billy Donovan knows that. He's won 2 national championships at Florida. He's gone over to the NBA ranks and joined Brad Stevens and 2 of the very few college coaches that went from Final Fours and success in college to going over to the NBA and being able to not just be a coach, but to stick and stay and with the players. And from that standpoint, he's obviously good. So it's no joke. He's solidified himself as a Coach of the Year candidate. And even though he didn't win it, congratulations to Toronto Raptors head coach and Nick Nurse for doing so. But Billy Donovan, that's a huge piece for him to hopefully make a little bit more of this coming up really, really soon, obviously. And they were certainly, if not the surprising team, arguably the most impressive team in the NBA this entire season, if you will. Dennis Schroeder had a very, very big game for them tonight. 30 points for him. CP3 did well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. People have conversations about who the best players that are young in the NBA. You hear about, Ja Morant and Zion Williamson, obviously Luka Doncic and Trae Young, Jason Tatum, all these players, Jaylen Brown, amongst so many others. One that people always seem to leave out one way or another is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's done a phenomenal job. Another one of those Kentucky guys, another one of those Kentucky guards. And I don't expect for him to necessarily have the kind of career that one did from Kentucky and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, MKG. But this one's going to be a little bit better. He's just a totally different kind of talent. Now, he's shaped a little weird. He's got the short little torso, the long arms, and the legs are kind of small or kind of short in a sense. And he's got this tall head thing going on like Frankenstein. It looks really weird, but the Duke is straight up ball. So congrats to them, the Thunder. have, like I said, had this series with the Houston Rockets, and now the Houston Rockets have some decisions on their hands because they're going to have their hands full, certainly coming up within the next few days or so. The Miami Heat moving on now to advance on to the Eastern Conference semifinals. They will assume that they will play the number one seeded, as they are a 5 seed, play the number one seeded Milwaukee Bucks in the next round. They'll be waiting for them. They defeat the Pacers tonight, 99-87. So a little bit of a lower scoring game, if you will. That and being in game 4, they pull out the broomsticks and they sweep all over the Indiana Pacers without Domantas Sabonis. But give some credit to the job that TJ Warren has done since the resumption of the NBA, because he has absolutely lit it up. He's been in every single conversation the entire time of some of the best performances that we've seen, especially consistency. We talk so much about Luka Doncic and what he's done, Dame Dollar with what he's done, and so many of these other players. Devin Booker was one of them at one point. But without, having Domantas Sabonis and not having a 110% Victor Oladipo, this guy being it's TJ Warren, for crying out loud. So, you definitely got to give some credit to him as well for some of his performances and still going out there and continuing to play and show that, we have something to play for, or kind of feeling like, it's not over, or still just competing, even if it was over the entire time. Miami is one of those teams a lot of people feel like can beat Milwaukee, and I think that they have a really good chance to do so, if I'm being honest. I'm not the only person to say that. I understand that there's a lot of people, who feel a lot of the same ways, and we see a lot of different miscues and errors from Milwaukee, and it kind of seems like that they're just kind of sleepwalking through this thing a little bit to an extent, but Miami's not doing that. When you start talking about guys like Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo is up for arguably the most improved player in the NBA this year. When you start talking about coaches, we name, 3 coaches that were up for Coach of the Year award and very deserving. Milwaukee's Budenholzer. You also have Nick Nurse, who won Coach of the Year, Billy Donovan, like I said, over at OKC, but it seems to be one of them that they kind of are forgetting all about. And that just so happens to be Eric Spoelstra at the Miami Heat. They just completely ran through this team, and I'm not even sure that Miami beat them at all one time this season, despite getting the nod on having 1 seed higher than them. And if they did, I don't think that those games counted for very much, as everybody had pretty much clinched for the NBA playoffs. And so from that standpoint, you got to tip your cap. Kendrick Nunn was right up there for as a Rookie of the Year candidate behind John Morant and Zion Williamson, maybe in front of Zion Williamson, according to some people. So you got a team here that has a nice balance of leadership, veteran leadership as well. And, you got Andre Iguodala in that conversation too. And so you've got some pieces. You've got some veteran pieces. You've got some young pieces. But one thing that you definitely have is you have talent. You have 3-point shooters, Jimmy Butler. Do I need to really even say more? That's a very dangerous team. And people who really, really follow the NBA and really follow basketball in general, they know exactly what that team is all about. So tip the cap to them. They're on their way to advance on, and we'll await the winner of Orlando and Milwaukee, which we all can pretty much assume will be Milwaukee at that time. And then there is the number 1 versus the number 8 seed, another number 1 versus number 8. The Los Angeles Lakers take a 3-1 lead over the Portland Trail Blazers, 135-115 in game 4, and a complete I'm trying to think of a good word. Y'all know my boy Iron Mike Dyson always lace me up with some good, like, strong Ivy League words that I can never seem to be able to say, let alone spell. Annihilation, obliteration, I think is fair terms to say what happened with the Lakers game tonight. At one point, these guys were up like 40 points. Granted, people are going to say, if you didn't really pay attention to the game, it was only a 20-point win, 135-115. And while that's still more than enough points, if you will, you had to be watching that game, because that doesn't exactly tell everything that happened and transpired in that particular game tonight. And I thought that, if the Portland Trail Blazers, I still think that they have a really good chance at winning one more game in this series. I know that Damian Lillard, I believe, is questionable for coming up. I think, was there another injury, or am I thinking about somebody else? Let's check here. By the way, it's oddly enough that LeBron did take notice of the 24-8 score from earlier tonight between the Lakers and the Portland Trail Blazers. Just more proof that the Mamba was in the house. Obviously wore number 8 and number 24 and got both of those numbers retired. And, says he was like, and this is just his quote, I was like, okay, he's here in the building. It was a beautiful night for our franchise. That's LeBron James on the Lakers being up 24-8 in the first quarter. And it's just more proof, and we'll get into some of that Kobe stuff here, other Kobe stuff here in a second. But I just think that was really, really, awesome to just kind of see, letting it be known that he's around. LeBron goes off for 30 points and 10 assists on Mamba Day. They take a 3-1 series lead. So we did see Carmelo and Dwight Howard get a little chippy a little bit. It did have a little bit of that effect. It was a little different. It was definitely a little it was a little different to see two of those older guys kind of go at it between each other, back and forth. But nonetheless, they go ahead and they win. And like I said, I think that Dame, CJ McCollum, Anthony Hassan, Trent Jr., they've been doing a great job, obviously, in putting themselves in this position to get into this series. And I know they feel like they're not done yet. I completely and respectfully disagree with that. But I will say that I think they will win one more game. I just thought that the one that they needed to win was tonight to tie the series up 2-2 and figure that the LA would run away with it after that at that point. But they really needed that, in that sense of, once you start getting down 3-1 in a series, it plays on you mentally, because there's not very many teams that come back from a 3-1 lead. So with everybody out there saying, oh, well, we've seen this before. We've seen teams come back from 3-1, not very many times against the King and LeBron. And not only that, but you got to be a special team. And I'm not saying that the Blazers aren't that, but I just think it's going to be a little bit too much LA, Lakerland, Showtime 2.0, if you want to call it that or whatever. So, from that standpoint, it's looking like LA is going to run away with this thing in advance. And like I told you, they're a type of organization, a type of team and franchise that can just flip you like that right there. That can just kind of flip the switch just that quick on you. They look horrendous, atrocious for game one. And then after that, it seems like, Portland was kind of running on fumes a little bit, in a sense, riding on a lot of emotion, and that's cool. A lot of positivity, a lot of optimism, but they woke up a sleeping giant, and it's been showing ever since Portland won that very first game. And I mean, the Lakers win 3 in a row. It just doesn't look very good. And while they can flip the switch and look so dominant so quickly, I mean, it's clearly looking like a lot of people weren't feeling the LA Lakers coming into the bubble or coming into the playoffs. They weren't playing very well. And even just coming into the series in general, coming off that very first game, where a lot of people felt totally different, the opposite way, about the Los Angeles Clippers. Now it looks like that's flip-flopping. So while the Lakers do look much stronger in that they are a team that can flip the switch and look so good, sometimes I don't think that always plays into your favor when you know mentally that you can flip the switch and you can play so well. That's when things don't always typically go your way. So that's pretty much the recap of the night, some stuff that we got to look forward to coming up as we get ready to conclude and get up out of here on the final buzzer. What we do have in regards to some of tomorrow's games, we only got 2 because the Toronto Raptors, arguably the best 2 teams or performances, the most impressive that we've seen out of anybody, Eastern Conference or Western Conference. It just so happened to be 2 teams in the East. In the whole NBA is the Portland Trail Blazers, is the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics. Both of them sweep The Philadelphia 76ers, who are without Brett Brown now, without not, I guess he's going to have to be standing in the unemployment line along with everybody else during Corona time. It doesn't seem like they're trusting that process very much anymore. Tyronn Lue, I heard, is in line for that job. I know that there's some other people. Maybe Jason Kidd is somewhere around that range. I'm not positive, but it'll be interesting to see what they can do, because Larry Brown's not walking back through that door anywhere anytime soon. That's for sure. So that'll be interesting. But the Sixers fall to the Boston Celtics in a rivalry. In a sweep fashion, and the Brooklyn Nets fall to the Toronto Raptors. So those two are going to be getting ready to kind of play. That'll be coming up later on this week. But because we don't have that, there's only two games that are going to be taking place on tomorrow, both in the Western Conference. One of them, both of them I'm excited about, but one of them obviously more than any of the others, because we've seen so many just theatrical moves and shots being made, and I think it's going to be really awesome. First up, 6:30 p. Eastern Standard Time, you have the Utah Jazz and the Denver Nuggets. Utah leads 3-1. They can close out Denver, who looks like they have all sorts of problems going on right now, and that they're not playing exceptionally well at the time that they needed the most. And the Jazz, between Donovan Mitchell, who put up 50, and I do understand, that Jamal Murray also put up a 50-piece, maybe the first time, and they scored over 100 points between each other. But nonetheless, that's not going to matter if Denver can't stop Utah. And Utah's the 6th seed, Denver's the 3 seed. That one should be interesting enough. So that'll take place. And then in the nightcap of the doubleheader, 9 p. Eastern Standard Time, as I'm rubbing my hands together like I got a napkin wrapped around my neck and got a big steak sitting in front of me, the number 2 seeded Los Angeles Clippers against the number 7 seeded Dallas Mavericks. That's going to be taking place. Luka Doncic and all of that good stuff. That being a team and a player that has led this team without Porzingis on the last game, hit a big buzzer-beating shot. Everybody's talking about it, tweeting about it, and so forth. I cannot imagine how many eyes will not be on that particular game on tomorrow. And they've won, 2 games in a row now at this point, 2 or 3, 2 games in a row. So I think it's going to be interesting to maybe see if they can make it 3 or not. So I'm really excited to see about those games as well. I appreciate everybody for checking out here the final buzzer with DeShaun Tate. Yeah, remember, this is where you can always get information late at night after the games, even the recap, or in the morning. You can always check out the recap to find something you're looking forward to and want to check it out. Want to show some love to my dude Derek Crush Boyd, who's always up in this thing, always finds a way, man. I gotta shoot that brother a gift card or something, man. See if he can do a little bit of helping me promote this stuff a little bit, man. Overly thankful and grateful for him and his contribution to the show. Always throw up a couple of his different comments and whatnot. The Lakers showed up tonight, but they can they be persistent going forward? I don't know, but I like to think that they will. If anybody can, it's a team that's led by LeBron James, and also saying that he's loving the NBA bubble playoffs competition. It's serious all the way to the finals, and I love it too. I think that this is something that's really good. Neutral site games, this is where you kind of find out, even though there's not the same pressure, who's coming to play, and where the home court advantage really has the effect on a lot of the games. And so I think that this is good. We were talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander earlier, saying that he's a gem and he can play both positions and defend. And last but certainly not least, saying that the Miami Heat is a sleeper pick to the finals. Low-key, they have all the pieces. It all comes down to the team. If you can beat them on the court and mentally, because on paper they outmatch a lot of the teams. I could have said it much better myself. I wouldn't be surprised to see them beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series. So we'll all just have to find that out. Remember to subscribe to Tate's Take, the podcast, TATESTAKE, again on social media at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. Anywhere you find your favorite podcast, also streaming on YouTube. This is the final buzzer with DeShaun Tate. Again, roughly 15 minutes after the conclusion of that game of the night. So 15, 20 minutes roughly after the Clippers and the Mavericks tomorrow. We'll be right back to do the exact same thing and close you guys out and give you a little bit of a recap after those games end. So appreciate all the support, the people that are gonna, that are listening now live on YouTube, amongst other social media platforms like Facebook and so forth, and even the ones going forward who will check this out sometime in the morning after everybody get some rest and then wake up for Taco Tuesday. Everyone have a good one, good people.